I'm sure all of us have those moments where, oh, why didn't I just do it? And it's true. You, especially in the business that we're in, you absolutely have to have the self-confidence or else. So what happened for you, obviously, was you were just a brilliant songwriter, and that spoke for itself. I mean, I'm sure the guys came to you afterwards and said, what? Why didn't you tell us?
I had spoken to Jerry a few times. He had written a book, and so I bought the book and then shipped it to him for him to sign for me. So he signed it very graciously and called me, and you know, he remembered me and all of that. So it was very cute. But you know, I did make it anyway, and I learned my lesson later on, and I decided I wasn't going to be shy anymore. And so when I was 17, I made my first demo in Woodstock, where I was living with Van Morrison's musicians, and I got them to play for free and give me the recording time, and I took my first demo to meet Seymour Stein in November of 1971, and he received me. I found a way to get to him, and he was very nice, and of course he didn't sign me, but I consider that my first real meeting in the music business. And then a few months later, I gave the same demo to Clive Davis, and he wrote me back and rejected me. But I did have the chutzpah to go up to these people and say, will you listen to my tape? So unbelievably, that was 1971. I met Paul Stanley in 1978. So it wasn't that much later that I actually had success. But those were very important years, and I wrote a lot of songs, and I was lucky because I got these managers to believe in me, and they let me stay home instead of having to work. And then I was writing songs day and night.
Did you have kind of a method of writing? And we'd love to know what your techniques are or were, or if they're the same now.
In those days, I was just playing chords and singing along melodies and mumbling and hoping that those mumbles sounded like something, and then maybe it sounded like all of a sudden a word would pop out, and then I'd string together some meaning towards that word. It was a really kind of amateurish way to write songs. Many years later, even though I'd had the hit with Kiss, I became the protege of Bob Crewe, the famous songwriter and producer of the Four Seasons. And I spent 2 years with him writing songs. We wrote 38 songs together, and he really taught me the art of songwriting. Bob's school of songwriting actually came from theater, and in theater, the lyric is the king. And so everything, the music is really scoring. And so everything is a slave to the lyric. So he wouldn't even let us begin a song unless we had a great title. Then everything would build up to make that title pay off. And he was a stickler about perfect rhymes and alliteration and inner rhyming from line to line. He wrote lines like, voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir? And, you know, just, I mean, so many songs, and if you see all the inner rhyming that just is within that phrase. So later on, when I was writing with rock bands like Aerosmith, I wrote lines like, walked into a bar on the shore, her picture graced the grime on the door. And all of that inner rhyming and alliteration stuck. Never judge a book by its cover, or who you gonna love by your lover. Those two lines came from Dude Looks Like a Lady. And every 4-year-old in the world that saw Mrs. Doubtfire sings those lyrics. Right. They have no idea it's about a tranny.
Came back around. That's right. I actually listen for that when I'm listening to songs. I agree. I try to do that too. But that's the thing, that those lines stick in people's heads, and it's because of all of that technique, and people don't even realize that it's that creative songwriting wise because it just flows. That's the trick, right? You make it sound like it's not obvious.
I think the human ear longs to hear rhyme, It's just we're hardwired for it. For some reason, it's just so pleasing. There's a new book out by Stephen Sondheim called Finishing the Hat. And in it, he very strictly details why perfect rhymes are the ones that are crisp, they're clean, and will stick with the listener. So he reminded me of what Bob Crewe always said, and then I, of course, rhymed home and alone many times. But they don't really rhyme. One's an N and one's an M. All I'm saying is that I'm going over lyrics on the musical that I'm writing and going back over these imperfect rhymes and trying to rewrite them to perfect rhymes if I can. And I've improved a lot of the songs doing so. So if there's any technique, that's one of the few things that I actually follow.
I'm glad you said that, because some people say, why are you trying to rhyme? What's all that about? And I'm like, you heard it from Desmond. You heard it from Desmond Child.